Alright, in this video I would like to share with you how we got into high rated dueling book in the current TCG format with Danger Thunder Dragon. The way I initially wanted to do this is by giving you a deck guide, more or less, a video spreadsheet where you can look up the combos if you want to copy the deck and try it out for yourself. But I realized this is a very freestyle deck. The combos are mostly 2, 3, 4 card combos even sometimes, and because you play 60 cards, sometimes it can be hard to get the exact hands and then look up the video and stuff. So I thought it'd be more useful and more efficient for everyone watching to just show you replays where we analyze what the strengths and weaknesses are of this deck in practice. You know, this is my passion project at the moment. This is everything I've been working on in the TCG. I want to make this deck as good as possible, so if you have any thoughts on it, leave them down in the comments. Here is the deck list, by the way. Take a screenshot, share it with your friends. We only did a few changes from the last time I showed it off. We changed emergency teleports for Magician's Souls and the 2 ritual monsters, the new. I feel like this basically does the same thing as emergency teleport. It brings out a dark monster that is of a different type than the other monsters in your deck. And the great thing with Dragon Ravine and opening of the Spirit Gate, sometimes you can easily draw 2 cards in one turn. And then the other thing, we kicked the Frightfoot package again. I liked it in the beginning. I do think for certain locals it can be a nice touch, but if you want to compete with the crazy combo decks, the base deck that is running around at the moment, or the Flunderies deck, you have to play cards in your side deck to counteract those, so that's why we put Lancia as well as the Super Polis back in the side deck. We also added, I think this was not in the last deck list, we added Chaos Nephthys, which that's a Chaos monster where you can special summon it from your grave or your hand if a card on the field is destroyed by a card effect. So mind that this also works with Rocket Tracer or Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, for example. And then you can special summon it by banishing a dark and light monster from your grave. And if it's special summoned, you can target a card on your opponent's side of the field and 2 cards in their graveyard and banish both of them. So versus certain matchups, and honestly against most matchups, this is a very, very good card that you can also now dump with the triple Chaos Valkyria. We cut the Chaos Creator because I didn't think it was necessary. Most of the time you didn't want to search it with your Thunder Dragon Fusion anyway, and to have it in your hand was mostly a brick that was now replaced by the Chaos Nephthys that has worked me very, very well in the last games. Alright, that was just a quick rundown of the deck list. So if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. Otherwise, let's go into some replays and watch over them and sort of comment them, and I will try to give my thought process as much as possible. The first match was versus Deadly Bilotti. So I thought this was a great match to show off. I actually have 2 replays versus him to commentate for this video, and like both of them I think were pretty good to commentate. So we lose the dice roll, they go first, they open Small World, Brave Token Engine, Fusion Destiny, Imperm, Gamma. So honestly, this seems like a really good hand. They could potentially activate Small World and even, you know, get rid of their Gamma, get some Engine. Probably they're playing the base deck since they're playing 60 cards is what I would think. Our hand is terrible actually. We open Driver, Roar, Dark, Droplet, Valkyria. So one of the things you have to keep in mind is that those Thunder Dragons are definitely bricks in your hand if you open them. And Driver is stuck to our hand definitely in those replays, I feel like. But it's not the end of the world. Like if you can Droplet their board and then summon out the Chaos Valkyria, summon out a Dark from the deck, and then you can already go into something like Anaconda or Dark. So it's not the worst. And one of the cool things about the deck in general, I feel like, is how well it can go second, weirdly enough, just with its engine. Of course, if your opponent puts up something very unfair that you cannot break, something like a Floodgate, something like Scythe, if you don't draw your non-engine outs, like, you're not going to make it. But versus anything that is fair, more or less, one of the decks being the Prank Kids deck, I feel like, which is very popular at the moment, you have a very high chance of winning even if your hand is not the very best. We actually activate the Dragon Dark in the standby phase. So the reason I'm doing this is because, yes, Gamma is a thing in the format, especially in the 60 card decks, but how high is the chance that they're going to see it, right? If they go first, of course, with their 5 cards. There is a chance, you know, I think it's like 25%, but I would rather take the risk, especially because we needed the Dark monster in the grave with this hand for the Chaos Valkyria. If we didn't Droplet their monsters, or if we couldn't Droplet, or if we had to hold it maybe, then it becomes a bit awkward, right? So we really want to get that Dark in the grave, and I would rather do it in the standby phase than in the main phase, because it doesn't play into talent, and in the end phase, they usually have a negate, so they can just, you know, negate it, obviously. They let it go through because they probably need their Gamma for the Small World. We can just fast forward. They're going to go for the Brave Token Engine here first. Going to go for right. And potentially we'll just skip forward to what their end board is going to look like. Right, so what they basically end with is DPE, double Raigeki with the Pandemonium, Impermanence, and the Griffin Negate. So it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 interruptions. With our hand, that's really terrible. Alright, let us draw for turn. They're gonna go for Prank Its Pranks, of course. They're gonna draw a card. I don't know what they drew into. They drew this. So they play Magician Souls as well. So they play an interesting list. Usually I think DPE, Magician Souls, they're not really standard in the Prank Its deck, but I guess 60 cards isn't either. But in the current format, it's just one of those formats, right? You just threw every good engine together, which is a bit annoying in my opinion, but it is what it is. So they use Bow Wow in the... Or they wanted to use Bow Wow in the standby phase, but we're going to use our priority actually to go for Droplet. Now, one of the things I didn't consider in this moment is that they could obviously still go for Weather Washer, but I do think that it is still correct to do the Droplet right here. Otherwise, they can spread their negation so easily, right? They could go for Griffin first and DPE, and then they would still have the Pandemonium. That's why I wanted to do the Droplet in the draw phase. So, in fact, we get rid of all the unnecessary cards in our hand. We get rid of the... all of the cards basically. The Chaos Base was a huge top deck because now we can get the Wyver Burster out of the deck and summon it out, banishing the Roar. So that's what we're going to do, use the Chaos Base. We had to hope that they didn't draw Ash, which they didn't. And now it's funny because we have to play versus Impermanence only. And we only have our Dragon Engine. But it's crazy how much this engine actually facilitates, especially if you have a Thunder Dragon monster in the grave. But we also have to crack their entire board, right? Otherwise, next turn, they're just going to escalate again. So we're going to use Dark, that is banished now. We're going to add Hawk, and we're going to go for Striker Dragon. It's just our regular Dragon plays. The Dragon plays, you already know them. Going to add Collapse Serpent, going to add Boot Sector Launch, special summon out the Collapse Serpent, put back the Wyver Burster, draw a card. We draw Opening of the Spirit Gates, which that is a huge top deck. Like that's insane. Like that I think that was sort of the turning point where I thought, wow, we can actually win this. Just already shows how incredibly good Droplet is, of course. And they actually imperm the Romulus, which I think from their perspective is not even that bad. Because if you assume that the card that we drew from their perspective was not that good of Chaos Space, then we don't have anything right now. Only Hawk and Boot Sector, but they don't really do anything. But the fact that we drew the Opening of the Spirit Gates is actually busted, because now we can add the Dark Beckoning Beast, and of course the Dark Beckoning Beast is a 1-card Link 3, or can even be a Link 2 and just an additional body or something. But of course the main thing that you want to go for with this engine as a 1-card engine is the Curious, alright? So we put the Snow in the grave is what we usually always do. Our mill was fine. Sometimes the problem can be with this deck that you mill one of the Fusion Destiny targets, so they cannot do DPE anymore. This didn't happen in that scenario, which is really great. Back when we played Chaos Creator, we had an option to put the materials back, even in the process, if we drew the Chaos Creator, but it was very situational and didn't really come up, so I didn't feel like that specific interaction granted the... or not granted, but this specific interaction didn't deserve a spot for... It didn't make the Chaos Creator deserve a spot in the deck list. What we do is we summon out Snow in this scenario. We also trigger Roar and the Valkyria. Valkyria can get the Chaos Nephthys in the grave. This is amazing for the follow-up, because this is a scenario where it's going to be hard to break their entire board with the materials that we have, even though we have a lot of stuff now. We still just only worked from one Wyver Burst, and to break their entire board, it's going to be rough, and their follow-up is pretty nice with Dasher and the Celestial in the grave, and even with the Illusion of Chaos. So that's why we need a card like Chaos Nephthys in our grave to win us the grind game, because it just destroys them completely in the grind game. I also want to show off this replay because we did a important misplay at some point. I don't know where exactly. We're going to see it in the replay somewhat. I think in this turn, even at the end of this turn, we did have OTK, but we didn't find it, and then we sort of had to win in the grind game, which I'm not going to spoil if we did, but that was basically the problem that we faced. So they used the Weather Washer with the Meow Meow in the grave to summon back these two. So the problem is that these two cannot die by battle, and this is the thing that I forgot. Yeah, it's something that you never want to forget, actually, if you play versus the Prank Kids deck. that these cards just, they cannot die, basically. The good thing is they can be destroyed by card effects, so that's why I would have had a way to break their board. But at least at this point, but then they use the Bow Wow now, so they cannot be destroyed by card effects. So now you have to always ask yourself, like, which Prankits monster they control can be destroyed by which sort of effect or by battle. So the Weather Washer cannot be destroyed by card effects, but can be destroyed by battle. But this can't die at all. They add back 2 cards from their grave, which is kind of scary because it makes their follow-up play a lot better. And then we go for access codes with the Curious and the Snow and the Dark up here. So our plan was obviously to destroy their DPE and then get it back with our Dark, so we get an additional body. So that was honestly a good play, I feel like. That was definitely correct, because it gives us a lot of advantage. It gets rid of their DPE. It just does a lot for us. So we use their... we summon back their DPE. Yeah, we think a lot here. There was a very difficult scenario for us. We used the X code to destroy the Griffin Rider. We use the X code one more time and destroy their token. Then we summon out Snow and we summon out Roar. And the thing that I thought here was that we just go Anaconda, go for our own DPE and run over everything by battle, and it would be enough damage. But yeah, it turns out this cannot be destroyed by battle. So that's something I forgot. We obviously had game where we could have just gone for Unicorn, discard the Boot Sector launch, shuffle it back into the deck, and then just go for game. But we didn't see the play. So that was very unfortunate. But it's also a scenario where you just have to find a different route. You just have to find a different way to win the game. So now I'm forced to go into a grind game that I didn't need to go into. They go for a turn. In the end phase we destroy their Fateful Adventure, because this will give them the equip spell that will potentially give them more advantage and stuff. So, or can really bounce back our DPE super easily. So what we have right now is we have a DPE, we have Snow, and we have Chaos Nephthys in the grave. But Snow, we don't really have too many materials. We don't really want to use it, to be honest. They also already have the Dodo. They use in the draw phase the Dasher to summon out the Ash, so they can use their Celestial effect in the grave. And then in the standby phase, they summon out the Dasher, which they had to do because of activating the DPE in their graveyard. And then something we do here is, you know, I thought I knew 2 cards in their hand. I knew the place, I knew the Pandemonium. Basically, the only thing we would have lost to would have been if they drew another kit, so another Prankits monster, is what I was more or less fearing. But even then, we still had Snow in the grave. So what I did was I used DPE in the standby phase, as you will see here, to destroy one of my cards, one of their cards. And we actually, I'm not entirely sure what we got rid of. We got rid of the Dodo. Yes, we go for the Dodo. We destroy our own Dragon Roar. Right, I sort of had to redo that just because if we would have destroyed our opening of the Spirit Gates instead of the Dragon Roar, we would have summoned out the Chaos Nephthys, we would have 5 monsters in the monster zone, so we couldn't summon Snow, right? We could not legally activate its effect to summon itself from the grave, so that's why I had to sort of redo that. Almost did a very crucial mistake right there. Not really a scenario that comes up too often, right? Where you can't activate Snow because you have too many monsters on the field. So we summon out the Chaos Nephthys, we use the Nephthys on the Prankits Pranks, on the Dodo, and on the Celestial, basically making it so they cannot draw 2 cards this turn. And we also put them on having a Prankits monster in the grave, but even then we still have Ash, not Ash, we have Snow in the grave. They activate plays, they summon out the Lampsies. They were probably hoping that we would book this down with Snow, that's why they normaled it, but we don't obviously because they already used their Meow Meow, so there's no reason to fear whatever they could have here. They go for Magician's Souls, and then they use Magician's Souls, summon it out, and I know that they have the fusion spell in the hand and the place on the field. They could potentially draw 2, so what we do is we actually use the Snow here and banish their DPE as well, so we permanently get rid of it. That's a nice interaction as well. So something you want to keep in mind, you can with your Dark summon out one of their Celestial or Dasher, for example, and banish it with your Snow to basically banish a card out of their grave. Yeah, so that's reasonably cool. Then we book their Magician's Souls and they go for yeah, they just make a joke where they don't have Dark in their extra deck, but it would be, of course, really, really good for them. So they scoop and we win game 1. It was, you know, we had droplets, so that was one of the things, I guess. And we top decked twice, so once Chaos Space and once the opening of the Spirit Gates. But we still had to play through everything that they had after the droplet and their follow-up. So I feel like it was still a nice replay to show off. Second one, we open Nessie, Thunder Dragon Fusion, opening of Spirit Gates, Fusion Destiny Droplet. So a bit of a weird hand. We do have 2 good cards, I would say, and a going second card. So it's reasonably alright. You know, Thunder Dragon Fusion, I've thought about cutting this so many times, but I feel like it just comes up too many times in the grind game. I have tried to side this out as well, maybe sometimes. In certain matchups you can maybe do it, but it is just sometimes the one card you need to push for an additional body, to have an extra monster on the field, to have something that is protected versus their Destroyer, Phoenix Enforcer to just run over it for the turn and stuff like that. They open the Water Enchantress, Droll, Impermanence, Ogre. So they don't open Pranket's Engine. I don't know if this is a common issue in the 60 card version. I could imagine almost. Even though, of course, Pranket's, you know, the chances here Pranket's monster is still very, very high. They normal the Ghost Ogre. They add the Griffin Rider and the Equip spell. They go for Griffin Rider, summon that out. They go for DPE pretty much. And this is honestly still very, very good for them. I mean, even though they don't have any very unfair interruption, they still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 interruptions once again. And Droll and Lockbird is a card that, of course, completely destroys our deck. It's the worst hand trap by far. And one of the reasons you can even think about playing this deck in the current format is just because Droll is not a card right now. Lancea post-siding, it's okay, you can deal with it sometimes, not always, but sometimes. But Droll and Lockbird, it just completely destroys your deck. So if that card ever goes back into the format, you have to find ways to play around it or find engines that don't run into it that hard. Right now, not that much of a problem. And you can obviously still go for DP, so that's reasonably fine. They dropped the Droll and Lockbird. I mean, yeah, I was kind of like, this is going to be very difficult. We still had Droplet, which that's kind of fine, but yeah, we just go for Dark. And Dark is just such a good card. I almost feel like one of the reasons this deck is even viable is because of Dark. Like, it's just so insane how much potential this gives you when you go second. We just put this out, honestly, not because they had a Dark monster or we wanted to summon a Dark monster in this scenario, even though we could have just summoned out a Dark monster. I don't know why we didn't do that. Why did we not do that? I do think that because we're under Droll and we want to search with the Dark is the reason, probably the main reason we did it in this scenario, or not probably, but I know because I played the match. It's the reason we did this Dark play is because I was hoping that they would not destroy it, but that they would rather use their DPE on something else, maybe our own DPE. And then on the following turn, the Dark would give us follow-up plays. We could also, of course, negate that DPE with our Droplet on our turn now, so that our Dark will get a search on the following turn for sure. So, yeah, that is all things you also have to consider. The Dark search is one of the most important effects about this deck, because you can search Orbital Hydralander, which Orbital Hydralander is absolutely insane. And then we want to run over their Ghost Ogre. We chain Droplet to negate the DP. We can even discard the Fusion, which is pretty nice. And then we run over their Ghost Ogre. We run over their Anaconda. And at this point, you know, it's not even that bad of a situation. Just because they have 2 impermanences. We have DP versus DP with both some cards on the field. So we can just cripple their impermanences away very, very quickly. So I'm not entirely sure what they... Oh, it's the end... Sorry, yeah, of course, it's the end phase. Their DPE gets destroyed because it got summoned the last turn. And they use impermanence on our DPE, which is fine, you know, it didn't really matter. They drew Pranks. They get back their DPE. Now it gets a bit tricky, you know, just because they have the Celestial follow-up, which this will definitely give them a Prankets monster. If they wouldn't have drawn a Prankets monster, it would have been okay. We had to negate the... we had to destroy the Fateful Adventure. Here, just because they had DPE to force our DPE. Anyway, they drew a Prankets monster, and at this point, it was pretty obvious that it was game over. Kind of unfortunate, but Yeah, I feel like it almost even, you know, for them it didn't really matter that they didn't have Pranket's engine. They had such good interruption anyway, just with hand traps and DPE. But yeah, we still played it out just because, you know, you never know. Maybe they don't know their Pranket's combos as well, but they definitely did. They played it out very smoothly here. So we go for the third game and we draw, oh, let's actually pause this for a second. We go for, so we open Allure, Token Collector. I don't know what we drew exactly right now, but we open Thunder Dragon Fusion again, once again, the more or less brick in the hand. But we obviously used Allure and we were able to banish Dark, which is pretty nice. And our hand is reasonably fine. We have a few ways to play and even to interrupt our opponent on that turn in a weird way or unconventional way you could say. That isn't reliant on having it on your field or anything. They open Gamma Ogre plus Pranket's combo. So it's not too bad for them. They open 2 hand traps. We use the Dragon Dark effect. We add Dragon Roar in this scenario just because we want to get Chaos Space off and discard the Dragon Roar with Chaos Space, exactly. And this actually plays very well around the hand traps that they have here, Gamma and Ghost Ogre, because they don't have Lancia, which Lancia obviously would have hurt us quite badly here. Striker and Wyver Burster trigger both, and we can add both of them. We summon Collapse Serpent, banish Chaos Space, draw a card. You know, this is just your standard plays that you will always do. Chaos Nef destroying this was not even the worst, because we could discard it with the Dragon Ravine. We use Dragon Ravine, discard the Token Collector in the scenario just because it's even more free. Because the Nephthys, they could potentially they could play around if they knew it was in the grave, but this can also summon itself out from the hand, so that makes it even better. The Absorauto searches our Rocket Tracer. Oh, but I went a bit too quickly here, so they actually want to Ogre the Dragon Ravine. Yeah, that's totally fine. We use the Magician's Souls, put the Illusion of Chaos to the grave. We use the Magician's Souls, discard the Thunder Dragon Fusion. Also one of the scenarios where I really like the Magician's Souls in general, to discard, you know, these unnecessary cards and draw more cards. That makes it a bit better, in my opinion, than the Frankenderp that just draws you 1 card on summon, but you have to skip your next draw phase. Makes it a bit more weird, and I feel like also that Frankenderp itself is kind of a brick, so you don't really want to normal it because it conflicts with your opening of the Spirit Gates and Dark Beckoning Beasts. So Magician's Souls is really nice in that sense, where you don't have to play any bricks to play it. Then we go into Apolloso. We use the Dragon Hawk to shuffle back some cards from our hand. We shuffle back 4 cards. And we draw Tracer, which that is amazing, because that makes their Ogre pretty much useless. And of course that was a top deck. Yeah, we have to admit that once again. But once again, it is, you just, with this deck, you kind of just have to see what the deck gives you, and then you have to work with it. And drawing Tracer, you know, the odds weren't totally against us. It was just kind of lucky. Instead of going for Chaos Ruler in this scenario, we would rather go for Anaconda immediately, just because we don't have any security, you could say, to get an additional extender in the grave by milling it with the Chaos Ruler. So we don't really want to risk having that problem that we cannot go into Anaconda later, so we just go for Fusion Destiny. Also, there was a high chance that we would have milled one of the Fusion Destiny targets, or not a high chance, but a reasonable chance that we would mill one of the Fusion Destiny targets with our Chaos Ruler. Then we would have to add it, and we couldn't get an extender. So that's why we went to go for that's why we went for the Anaconda immediately. They go for Gamma in response, which, you know, I thought, oh, that's not too good. But we can still Gold Suck for Chaos Valkyria, really, really good Gold Suck in that scenario, and we can mill the Snow. So they draw for turn, and in the chat they asked me if they can mulligan, just because of course they were joking around. They drew so badly and they just scoop. So basically what I wanted to show off mainly with this third game also is how incredibly well our deck can just play through hand traps if you draw reasonably enough. So the normal hand traps, more or less, not the floodgate ones like Lancia or Droll, you don't really suffer from them, right? It's not like we still ended with Apollosa and Snow in the grave, and Token Collector. So such an amazing such an amazing deck versus the regular hand traps, right? The fair ones, more or less, that a lot of decks are playing in the moment to counteract the base deck, which is not as good versus the regular hand traps, I feel like. Alright, maybe we can look at a few more replays actually. This took quite a long time, maybe we can go through the next ones a bit more quickly. Let's see how it turns out. For this one, we won the dice roll. I also want to show off some replays where we won the dice roll. I usually would like to show them off when we lose the dice roll, because I think it's more important to see the deck go in second rather than go in first, because the combos you can sort of make up on your own, but to go second, it's really the difficult part about it. So we open Allure, Celestial, Absurrouter, Souls, and Droplet. So it's not really the best hand, right? We have to see what we draw with Allure. They open Lancia, Fusion Destiny, Bird Call, Port of Prosperity, Fractal. Now this would be interesting to hear from you guys, but personally I always like to throw the Lancia in the Stamper phase in this format just because of the Right engine or Brave Token engine, pot cards, Small World, or not Small World because you can chain it there, but in general I just like to throw it in the Stamper phase, even though it runs into Gamma of course, but it's always the risk that you have to take, I suppose. We activate Allure because they didn't punish, we didn't get punished by their Lancia in the main deck because they didn't throw it in the Stamper phase, and we we draw Opening of the Spirit Gates, which is very good because that's our one way to play, or it's one of the ways to play around Lancia with our deck. We add Dark Beckoning Beast. I can fast forward this. We use the Dark Beckoning Beast. They chain the Lancia, which in this case I'm thinking, wow, that's a +1 for us because we don't have any cards that rely on banishing at the moment. We obviously get Snow in the Grave still because that's our best interruption. We use the effect of Curious to mill 3. We mill the Dasher, which is really unfortunate. It's one of the things I haven't really managed to find a solution to this, is when you like the Curious mill is mandatory. You have to mill 3 cards with Curious when a card is sent by a card effect to the grave, so even by its own effect. And if you draw one of the DPE targets, it becomes so weird, right? Because your end board relies a lot on having DPE on the field. Otherwise, you just end with Apollosa and IP and Snow in the grave, but having the DPE on top is so important, I feel like. So yeah, one of the cool things you can actually do is, maybe you see it in this replay as well, is you can, if you mill the Dasher or the Celestial and you draw the Valkyria as well, you can actually use the Valkyria to mill the other DPE target to the grave to get their effects on the next turn to draw cards regardless, even if you don't have DP, which I think it's pretty neat. In this scenario, we have the Celestial in the hand, so yeah, it's kind of unfortunate, the whole thing. We use Souls though, and we use Souls to draw a card. Yes, draw a card. We draw Rocket Tracer, you know, which is it's not really, it doesn't really do anything this turn, but I'm still pretty confident, to be honest, because we end with Apollosa for 2. We end with Snow as well in the grave, and we have Droplet. So the great thing about Droplet and Snow is, of course, you can summon out the Snow and then use Droplet, get rid of it, and use it again. It's so crazy. The great thing is also with Droplet, we can get rid of our Celestial to have a draw next turn with our Celestial in the grave, obviously. They play Tri-Brigade, obviously. So they go for Prosperity, they add the Nerval to the hand. They go for Bird Call, they add Warbler, which that's totally fine. They go for Fractal. I actually negate that just because I don't want them to get the, what's it called, Sparrow in the grave, and I don't think that they would have held their Gamma if they had one. So we use the Apollosa, they go for Warbler anyway, they go for Nerval, and this is where I trigger the Snow. The reason I trigger Snow here is because I'm not scared of Droplet in this scenario, because I can just chain my own Droplet to it, and then we just win on the spot, obviously. We use the Valkyria to dump the Roar, we use the Snow to flip the Nerval face down. They go for Fusion Destiny, which is a bit annoying, but it's not the worst. We use a Droplet on the DPE, not because of any particular reason to negate it, but more so to get the Celestial in the grave to get some draws. I think that's what we really need. So it's also nice because now they cannot pop our Snow, and we can normal summon the Tracer on the following turn to make Chaos Ruler if they don't respond. So we draw Opening of the Spirit Gates, which is very good because I know that they were probably going to destroy this with their DPE. It feels so good for them. Also, we slammed it down in our main phase immediately, even almost in our draw phase, just to show them how much we needed the card. But in actuality, we didn't need it at all. So we go for Tracer, we go for Chaos Ruler. Probably maybe we could have used the Celestial early. You kind of always want to see which cards do I already have, which cards do I maybe not want to mill but rather draw, or not want to draw but rather mill at the moment, and then sort of make your decision from there. But we use Chaos Ruler, and at the Illusion of Chaos we mill Gold Sarcophagus, Tsushinoko Gamma, Quick Launch. So I think the Magician's Souls was more or less the best one we could have taken here. It didn't really make the biggest difference. They're all just random bodies. We draw 2, we draw Dragon Dark as well as Dark Beckoning Beast, which we already normal summoned, and we cannot, we already normal summoned, so the Dark Beckoning Beast is not really the best card to draw here, but Dragon Dark is something actually we could have banished with Snow. I don't know why we didn't, or did we use, or did we banish? Yeah, we banished the Roar. Oh, that makes sense. So we summon out the Dark from the grave, and at this point, I mean, it's very obvious that we just win here because we make the Dark, and then we can summon out their DPE. And once again, it just shows Dark is so incredibly powerful. So for the next replay, we open Dasher Driver once again, Magician's Souls, Allure, Nessie. So this is still fine, right? It depends. Versus Tri-Brigade, I'm usually confident even with a hand like this, just because Allure can get us so many cards, and I've made good experiences, you could say, or I've had good experiences with Allure and a bad hand, because we can just draw into engine cards, and usually if you have two or three extenders in your hand, you can break through a lot of boards, because they're weird extenders in a sense. Opening of the Spirit Gates is a card that not many people will negate if they have a negate for it, but on the other hand, it just facilitates a lot of bodies, so they kind of want to negate it. It becomes really weird for them. Quick Launch is a card like this as well, where it gets you a free body that leads to a lot if they don't do anything about it immediately, but you also don't really want to ash it. So yeah, just a lot of weird extenders that can facilitate a lot of advantage on its own. But they open Sanctum, Ash, Double Imperm, Foolish. So I can already tell you it's not looking too good for us. For the mere reason that they have Sanctum almost. We don't know what we draw with the Allure, so maybe we draw into Droplet at this point in time, but yeah, we draw Ravine, so and they ash the Allure, so yeah, it just becomes very bad, right? We use Ravine for Nessie, but or discarding Nessie, but they use the DPE. I'm honestly just fast forwarding here, just because. Yeah, as soon as they use Sanctum, it's just pretty much over. We go for a Dark. I don't even know why they let us go for Dark here. But they imperm that, and we just show them that we drew all the bricks. So it didn't really matter anyway. Just because they ash the Allure, which is not something that commonly happens, because usually people are scared of Gamma. Or they're scared of you having an extended health, because Allure is pretty much a free card, right? You can, it's not even once per turn, so you can have another one and just activate that. But on the other hand, many hands for this deck get stopped if they actually Allure. So I don't know, right? We go first. We open Dark Beckoning Beast, Thunder Dragon Fusion once again. Quick Launch, Droplet, Illusion of Chaos. I feel like Droplet and Fusion, they really like us. But this is one of those hands, right? You have 3 cards to play with. Illusion of Chaos, Quick Launch, as well as Dark Beckoning Beast. And Illusion of Chaos becomes a lot better with Thunder Dragon Fusion, because it gives you a free draw, basically, with a card that you can put into the grave. So they open Fractal, Imperm, Warbler, Prosperity, Celestial. They have 1 hand trap, which will not be enough, because they use the Imperm on the Dark Beckoning Beast, which I think is correct. The deck that we're playing, you have to stop it as fast as possible, I feel like. If you get rolling with the deck and you have a Curious on the field and then negate the Curious, and you have 1 extender, you go into Apollosa, and then you have another extender, you go into maybe something like your Dragon Engine, and then you go into Chaos Ruler, and they just waste their hand traps. I will show a replay after this one where they throw 3 hand traps and it just didn't matter at all, because they're just not impactful, not the Floodgate ones that this deck really dislikes having thrown at it, but everything else. Yeah, so basically the point that I'm trying to make is that I think you want to stop this deck as early as possible with your hand traps. We go for Quick Launch, go for Rocket Tracer. I can fast forward this honestly, because we've seen this, you know, this type of combo many times already. We go for Boot Sector, summon out the Tracer, use the Tracer, summon out Recharge, go for Chaos Ruler, we mill 5 cards, we mill Call Up Serpent as well as Gamma and Roar, so it's an amazing mill, it's pretty crazy. We go for Magician Souls, we can use Magician Souls, get rid of the Fusion and the Boot Sector, draw Allure and opening of the Spirit Gate. So at this point, you know, we just have everything, because we can even use the opening of the Spirit Gates to summon back out the Dark Beckoning Beast from the grave. It's amazing. We go for Call Up Serpent, we use the Linkuribo that we made of the Magician Souls and the Call Up Serpent to go for Anaconda. We use the Call Up Serpent, get Wyver Burster, banishing the Roar, summoning out the Dark, and I mean, this is everything you can basically dream of. We obviously looked into the Dark Monster, so we can't go into Apollosa, Curious, or anything. But it's just amazing. we go for DPE, and I'm very happy with our situation here. The only thing we don't have Snow in the Grave, that's why I'm a bit scared. But we have Droplets, so that's what kind of makes up for it. They go for Prosperity, they reveal 3 cards. I think maybe they should have gone for 6 to see if they can get Droplet, because their hand doesn't really play through a lot, I feel like. At least not what we have. On the resolution, we go for Apollosa, because I feel like versus Tri-Brigade, Apollosa is obviously amazing. And from this point, I think they just scoop. Yeah, they asked me if I have Droplet face down, and I show them, and they're like, yeah, I can't play through this anyway. So yeah, I mean, they threw Impermanence. It didn't really do anything. It didn't do enough. We couldn't get Snow in the Grave, but it wasn't a huge deal. Our follow-up was amazing. If you think about that, we could use Fusion in the Grave. We could use Dasher, Celestial. We have 3 cards in hand. So yeah, good replay to show off what the deck can do. This is once again versus Deadly Belotti, which was, I think, a couple of days after the first replay. We still play both the same deck, and I think this is an interesting deck to show off when we play against it, just because it offers a lot of nice interaction for our deck, because it doesn't inherently do any of the more unfair things like Scythe or anything, but it puts up a lot of interruptions, like 5-6 interruptions that you have to beat through. So yeah, in that regard, it's very difficult for most decks to play versus that deck, but I think that's the thing that I want to give you when we analyze those replays, or when we talk about these replays, is for this specific deck, I want you to go away with the information that our deck can play through this type of interruption sometimes if we draw not too bad, right? If we don't draw too many bricks. Basically, they go for their regular combo, right? I'm not going to talk about this. We've seen this a million times at this point in the format. Even the format's not even been like a month or anything. Maybe exactly a month or something. But these sort of things get stale very quickly. Like the Prank Kids turn 1 combo. We all know at this point. I honestly also gotta say that I'm not a huge fan of like them doing a lot of archetypes, releasing a lot of archetypes that you can just splash into anything else, right? I think DPE is one of the better examples. That with better, I mean that it's an example where it's not that bad, because I feel like it's still fair enough. But the Brave Token engine, I feel like it just makes a lot of decks that were already pretty good even better, while other decks can just not play it because they need their normal summon effect. So yeah, I don't know what I think about it. And with I don't know what I think about it, I mean I don't think quite well of it, right? But it is what it is. I hope they get rid of this as soon as possible, but that's for a whole nother discussion, which we'll go into in another video. But they go for Prank Kids Pranks in the end phase, and obviously they have a lot of interruption. Once again, they have let's see, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 interruptions. They don't have DP this time around, but they have double hand trap. We go for Gamma, of course. They're gonna negate that. It's gonna go to the grave. But we still got rid of one of their disruptions with our Gamma, which is pretty cool. We drew the opening of the, not the opening of the Spirit Gates, but the Dark Beckoning Beast. We used its effect. They let it through for some reason. I think you should Veiler this for sure. Just because this gives you the opening of the Spirit Gates, which this you can get away with Magician Souls, and also you can use this effect to discard one and special summon one of those back. I guess maybe they wanted to play around us having this already in hand, but I don't know. We had the Chaos Summoning Beast, we normal summon that, we go for Dark. The reason we're going for Dark here is just because we want to protect ourselves from their Pandemonium. So if they were to use their Pandemonium to destroy our monsters on the field, they have to inevitably also destroy the Dark, which the Dark will get us Orbital Hydrolander, which is of course another threat that they have to deal with. We discard the Roar, get rid of, I'll not get rid, but special summon the Chaos Summoning Beast. We use Magician Souls. Well, unluckily we're forced to use the Magician Souls to put it on the field to potentially draw more cards, because we couldn't force their Pandemonium that way. Now they will go for the Pandemonium. They will summon out the Butler, go for all the Prank Kids monsters, and summon out a bunch of stuff, and then they will use the Butler. One thing that was really nice on the resolution of this is we could play around the Ash that we knew they had, because they added it with Small World, by chain blocking our Dark by using the Recharger from our hand. So that was reasonably nice. So we could even summon out any Dark monster. And what I wanted to go for was definitely the Magician Souls to draw one card, because we hadn't used its effect yet. We add the Orbital Hydrolander. We have more than 5 monsters with different names in the grave to be able to special summon it. On the resolution, we use the Magician's Souls to draw 1 card. We want to keep the Fusion Destiny in our hand. It's more or less the only card we can go to that will potentially give us or win us the follow-up play, or the grind game, you could say. But I think from what I remember, the card we draw here, it's Celestial. So that's really unfortunate. That was sort of the turning point. Once again, we would have had to top deck something nice here, something like Quick Launch, something like, I don't know, even Chaos Space, I suppose, would have been okay. But yeah, just didn't happen, and then we lost that way. So we open, in our next hand, opening, Quick Launch, Allure, Dragon Dark, Collapse Serpent, an amazing hand. And they open Ghost Spell, Gamma, Veiler, Dropsies, Terraforming. So their hand is also amazing. But what I want to point out, once again, if they don't open the unfair hand traps, we just win if we have 3 extenders. And I'm honestly just going to fast forward this. So, well, not fast forward, but I'm going to go through it pretty quickly. We use Dark. We add the Dragon Hawk, exactly. We use the opening of the Spirit Gates, add the Dark Beckoning Beast. We use the effect. They threw a Veiler, which I think is correct. We use the Dragon Hawk. We actually went a bit too quickly here. They want to go spell the Dragon Hawk. We use the Collapse Serpent. We add the Wyver Burster and the Boot Sector once again. They already wasted 2 hand traps. We go for Wyver Burster. We summon out the Rocket Tracer. We go for Chaos Ruler a bit early here, so we're not locked into Dark Monsters, so we can go for Curious. Then we go for Anaconda. We use Boot Sector from the grave because they have 2 monsters on the field, and then they just scoop on their own. So they basically hand loop themselves here. They just used too many hand traps that didn't do anything. Alright, our starting hand, we have Nibiru, Chaos Space, Danger Nessie, Collapse Serpent, Celestial. So I put in Nibiru. I know that in the 60 card version of the deck, well, not version of the deck, but in our deck in general, it's not very likely to draw multiple hand traps. But I feel like if they don't draw their Brave Token Engine, which they have a lot of ways to get to it, but they also play 60. So there's a chance that they don't open it. And they only open their Pranks Engine. They're definitely not going to play around Nibiru because most people don't expect, you know, your opponent to side in the Nibiru if you play the Prank Kids deck. Just because it's very bad versus the Brave Token deck, Brave Token Engine. So that's more or less my reason. I sort of wanted to double mind game them in a sense, but yeah, they just happened to open the Brave Token Engine, so it didn't really matter. They have a crazy hand, man. Like they open everything. They open Brave Token, Prank Kids, and 3 hand traps. It's the best, and even they draw one of the unfair hand traps, right? So that was, yeah. So that's why it's going to be really difficult. The only hope I have is that we have Nibiru. They're obviously going to negate it with their Griffin, but it trades with one of their cards, so it's a 1-for-1 trade, which is all right. And we have Collapse Serpent to be able to banish the Nibiru and get our plays going. So that's not even too bad, I feel like. Yeah, maybe if we can draw something nice off the top, we can do something. Of course, Droplet would have been insane, but we don't draw that. They draw another Prank Kids monster in the end phase. They use the Bow Wow on the standby phase. Not the standby phase, but as soon as we, summon a monster, we go into Boot Sector to let everything go through. We actually used the Nessie here before using any of the other cards in hand. Honestly, I was pretty desperate at this point. Even though we had a lot of gas, I knew that they also had a lot of gas because they discarded the Ghost Dugger on their turn for the Griffin Rider, or rather the Fateful Adventure. So that, that already tells you that they have a broken hand if they discard a hand trap that is so valuable. Especially when you go first and you can have hand traps on top of your combo. Yeah, so I already expected them to have 3 hand traps in their hand or something like that. That's why I wanted to go for the Nessie and see if we can top deck something amazing. Maybe something like Droplet or something. But yeah, all in all, like I didn't really have a lot of hopes here just because, yeah. I knew that they were going to have a lot of hand traps. We go for opening of the Spirit Gates. We normal summon the Dark Beckoning Beast. We normal summon the Chaos Summoning Beast that we searched off the Dark Beckoning Beast. They used Lancia. We thought about maybe going for Linkuriboh here and also summoning back the Chaos Summoning Beast to make Linkuriboh. Anima, and go for Curious, which would have baited their Butler for sure, but I wanted to see if we could maybe bait their Butler by making the Anima a bit earlier and taking their Dropsies, but they're a good player, they don't get baited by it, so we just take the dropsies, and now we have to use the opening of the Spirit Gates, which will obviously trigger their Butler because they're scared of us going for a Link 3. We could even go for something like Unicorn. And at this point, we still have a couple of plays. So we can go for Orbital Hydralander. Now we can special summon it. And one of the things is that if we mill a Rocket Tracer or Snow, we still have a couple of good cards to mill. We could possibly get Plane, right? Even though we cannot destroy their prank hits by card effects, it's still not a bad spot to be in general, I feel like. So we go into the battle phase to play around the Veiler that they could have. We mill 3 cards and we actually mill the Rocket Tracer. The problem is we mill Nessie, so we have 2 of the same name and we don't have a Snow in the grave to control our graveyard. They will chain the Ogre. I thought, wow, that's really nice because now our boot sector is live and maybe they've forgotten that we had it in hand, but obviously they had Veiler and they just throw that. So this is where the game ends and we just lose. But what I wanted to point out is just that even, basically that's what our deck is able to do. We can go second and they have to use both Butlers, Lancia and 2 hand traps or 3 hand traps in order to stop our deck. So I think that's really what I want to show when we analyze these replays, when we show off these replays, that this is what our deck can do better than other decks in the format, go second with its engine inherently, even though it cannot play as many non-engine cards. So to pin it all down, what I wanted to achieve with this video is show you basically some high-rated replays for this deck, and we analyze them together, look at them together, see what our deck can do and what it can't do. So it cannot draw a lot of non-engine cards with its 60 card pile, and we don't play as many of them as maybe the base deck. But with our engine, we can go go in second really well, and that's something that other decks in the format cannot do as well. So for your locals, for your regionals, I think this is a really good pick, especially if you don't expect everyone to play a Scythe Log. I think it's a very, very good deck. If you have any thoughts on it, like I said, this is my passion project. I've changed this deck list a dozen of times in the last weeks, and every day there's new ideas coming up on what you can play in it. So if you have anything that you maybe would like to throw in the deck, or maybe that you think would be good, that still synergizes with everything the deck is trying to do at the moment, please leave it down in the comment section down below. Be a part of the conversation. I would love to hear from you. I think that's it. I'm glad to be back in full power, hopefully, and I will see you in the next one very soon. Bye.